Jetzt geht es zum designierten Messe-Highlight. Der Grund, warum ich dann doch das Flugticket gebucht habe, weil ich eigentlich ja vorhatte, die ISE auszulassen, weil ich erst auf der CES war. Das haben Sie ja gesehen in unserem YouTube-Channel. Und ja, CES war der Grund Storm Audio mit Dirac ART. Dieses Mal gibt es von Trinnov deren Akustik Soundfield irgendwas. Ich habe den Namen noch nicht so drauf. Damit ich den Namen noch lerne, bevor es dann gleich an die Technik geht, wobei die den da garantiert auch nochmal sagen. So, dann sammle ich noch ein paar Eindrücke vom Trinnov-Stand. Ein Sony GTZ 380. Wir nutzen die Zeit und machen mal so lang hier Lautsprecher, Lautsprecher, Lautsprecher. Gibt es aber noch ein Sony-Video von diesem Stand, wo wir bei den Lautsprechern noch was vorstellen. Und hier dann die Technik unter Zuhilfenahme der Trinnov Altitude 32 mit dem Acoustic Field Control. Jetzt wissen wir es. Hier geht es dann gleich rein. Ich werde mich jetzt hier in diese Schlange einreihen für meine 17 Uhr Vorstellung. Und dann gucken wir mal, was draus wird. So, und jetzt geht es gleich auf in die Heiligen Hallen. Die Leute gehen aus der letzten Demo raus. Und dann geht es für uns rein. Ich war zugegebenermaßen gestern schon mal drin. Sound war sehr präzise. Allerdings waren die Lautsprecher überfordert. Die Subwoofer, die haben dann einfach ein bisschen angeschlagen. Jetzt soll es besser klingen und es gibt noch mehr technische Infos. Deswegen gibt es erst jetzt am zweiten Tag das Video und wir quetschen uns mal rein. So. Hi. Officina Acustina haben hier die Akustik gemacht. Wenn ich jetzt auf Weitwinkel gehe, ach, es geht sogar von der Lichtempfindlichkeit. Ah, ja, schöner Raum. Ich werde das ja als Hauptvideo hier aufbauen. Wie gesagt, ist ja der Grund, warum ich hier bin. Und dann baue ich hier viel rein. Wir schneiden das kurz. Das ist der Johnny wieder zuständig. Also danke an dich, Johnny, fürs fleißige Schneiden. Was ist heute? Mittwoch, am Mittwochabend. Bin mal gespannt, bis er das fertig hat. Dann gucken wir mal. Also ganz kurz, bevor es jetzt so technisch wird, ich weiß nicht, wie es abläuft. Die Technologie von Dirac, dessen Namen ich schon wieder vergessen habe. Soundfield irgendwas. Can you recall the name of Trinnov's new technology they're showing here?
Not off the top of my head.
Oh, okay, so it's not only me. Okay, that's good to know. Also es geht letztendlich darum, dass man Subwoofer gezielt steuern kann durch Algorithmen, um die Basswellen, die sonst einfach simpel kugelförmig abgegeben werden, im positiven Sinne der Raumakustik zu beeinflussen. Inklusive Funktionen, die auch ein dBA hat, sprich hinten wegschlucken, vorne emittieren. Und dann soll der Bass gelenkt werden. Das ist das, was ich bisher verstanden habe. Und ich hoffe, durch die jetzt kommende Pressedemo wird es eine Stufe besser und intensiver erklärt, um die Unterschiede zu dem ART, was ich mittlerweile gelernt habe, von Dirac herauszufiltern. So, die Spannung steigt.
Okay, so I want to just give you a bit of information about that because it's a very, very complex area. Okay, Arno, our CEO, was doing an hour and a half's presentation for CEDIA earlier, and he managed modestly to keep it to just over 2 hours. Okay, he probably needs a week and a half to do it justice, but it's a very complex area. So I'm going to try and explain it to you in a friendly manner and in a decent time frame. So let's first start with talking about wave interferences. Okay, we're used to wave interferences in real life. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a gentleman bouncing 2 tennis balls in a lake or a puddle, can't quite tell. But what you're seeing is the 2 sources. What you were seeing is the 2 sources being the tennis balls, and then as the waves propagate out, they then interact with each other, causing interference. Okay, the same exact thing happens in sound. Okay, now when that happens in sound, and it happens in rooms, this is what we call room modes. Okay, now room modes being peaks and dips in the frequency range, and they can be wild. I mean, you can get peaks of 30 dB plus you can get dips of complete cancellations. Okay, so it's the problem that the industry has always tried to overcome, and we've done this traditionally with multiple subwoofers. Okay, that truly masks the problem. Okay, it makes it good for the 2 seats in the middle. Okay, but the rest of you unfortunately don't get the same experience, and that is just the physics. So Trinnov are coming at this with a bit of a different approach. And apologies for stealing the limelight. Mine's the longest part of the presentation, so apologies for that. There are two types of active acoustic systems out there currently, okay? And the two approaches are very, very different, okay? One approach is to really deal with the mass market issue, okay? Being that the rooms aren't professionally designed, not professionally built and installed, such as the lovely room we have here. And it's a problem where acoustics really aren't taken into consideration, so they really have to try and meet that mass market demand. Us as Trinnov, we play in the high-end residential market, okay? So we assume that our dealers and our distributors design well-designed rooms, okay? They take into account acoustics and deal with the mids and high frequencies in such a way as we get in this room. But to do that with the bass is very, very difficult. Okay, now Peter mentioned the air gap that we have in the room here. Okay, this room is still incredibly well designed. We're using less bass trapping than they normally would because of the technology we're introducing. But the bass decay in this room is still about 400 milliseconds, which is pretty damn good. Okay, I'll get onto another slide in a minute that explains how much better we can make that. So, what we're also implementing is room-specific bass steering. Okay. Now we traditionally think of bass as omnidirectional. Okay. We are now moving bass into a directional nature. Okay, by the way of our algorithm. So we're using the woofers at the front. So we've got 8 of the subwoofers at the front here, projecting the plane wave. Okay. We're doing the bass steering, so we're keeping the bass off the ceilings, off the walls, off the floors. Okay. So you're reducing the interferences massively when you're doing that. Okay. There is still some stuff hitting the walls, okay? But that stuff that's hitting the walls and coming back to the listener is actually helpful to us, okay? Those interferences are good interferences, and we can actually use those to compound the excellent subwoofer array that we have and create more phantom acoustic absorbers, okay? So once that wave hits you, it's very, very clean, so you're going to feel lots of punch. Then it travels to the back of the room and it gets absorbed by the rear woofers. Now, in a traditional double bass array, that rear set of woofers is out of phase with the front, okay? So it's literally playing the opposite signal to cancel, okay? The big problem with that approach is that you can't absorb 100% of the sound, okay? Because you don't have 100% of the surface area covered by the subwoofers. So the signal that does come back into the room is then out of phase with the front speakers, so the front speakers then can't cancel it. Okay, the benefit of our system is that all the subwoofers are in phase. Okay, so any bounce that comes off the back wall is already severely reduced in signal level, and then it's reabsorbed by the front wall. Okay, so that means we get about 50 milliseconds worth of decay in this room, as opposed to the normal 400 to 600. Okay, so I'm not going to explain about the algorithm because I've already talked too long. Okay. So I want to give you an example of how the bass steering works. So you can see this animation here. We're using a 3-woofer array, okay, to give us a 3-dimensional bass steering. Without the bass steering, you see the bass coming off the sidewalls and back in as interference. When we engage the bass steering and the algorithm, you see we get the really clean first wavefront. It's absorbed, severely reduced in level, and then the remainder is done by the back wall, by the front wall. Okay, so this is the room that we have for ISE. So you can see the 8-woofer array at the front, and the same principle all comes down, accommodates the tiers and the seats and all the human beings that are in the room, absorbs, and then goes back the other way. Okay, so here's a graph of our decay time. Okay, so this is from 20 Hertz, just below 20 Hertz, up to 100 Hertz here and above. So you can see in the before we're about 400 milliseconds delay in the bass, and typically they're now the wrong way around. So that's the before, and the after we're now down to less than 100 milliseconds, down to about 50 milliseconds. So what that means is that you're hearing the bass as it was intended, not as the room is influencing it. Okay, so it makes it very, very clean. So we then move on to the spatial variation. Okay, so those of you that are familiar with CEDIA's latest recommended practice, the level 4, which is the sort of top tier unobtainium level, to meet that standard you have to have bass magnitude response less than 2 dB plus minus at the center listening position and one of the adjacent seats. Okay, and we're able to achieve with our algorithm that across all 18 seats. Okay, so quite an improvement.
If anyone here is at all conversant with cinema design, I hope you appreciate how fiendishly difficult that is. For 2 seats, it's not that difficult. For 16 seats, it's probably the first 18 seats, it's probably the first time it's ever been achieved.
Okay, so it's enough talking from me for now. I'm just going to play you a very quick demonstration and show you what the system does in bypass and then with the correction on. Okay, so.
Jetzt sind wir direkt nach der Demo. Das Licht ist angelassen. Jetzt gibt es ein bisschen frische Luft und die Frage- und Antwortstunde. Die ersten Leute verlassen schon den Raum, überraschenderweise. Okay.
Thank you, first of all, for coming to the presentation. We hope you enjoyed it. Can we get any comments or feedback or questions?
It simply sounded great, especially in the low frequencies. Absolutely amazing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very precise.
Yeah. Yes,
I've had quite a lot of feedback that some people haven't liked the bass.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because when we did the R&D for this room back in Italy, the first time I heard it, I thought, whoa, I've just never heard this before. And it sounded wrong, not because it was wrong, but because everything else I'd ever listened to was wrong, and I might have just heard it right for the first time ever. And we're not used to hearing bass with that little overhang. You know, that's so little overhang to the bass, we're just not used to it. And some people think it's a little bass light because you haven't got that richness of the boom that comes after the initial impact. But this is very right.
Ja. So, jetzt können wir unser Trinov-Interview machen. David steckt sich... Your name is David, that's right.
Yeah, David, yeah.
Steckt sich das Mikrofon noch an. Legen wir mal los. David, it was a pleasure being in your demo. It was one of the best bass reproductions I've ever heard so far.
Great.
But speaking frankly, I do not really have any idea whether it would sound as in an equal way without your new technology.
Sure.
So basically, when having a DBA perfectly set up, it is supposed to sound exactly like that.
Sure.
So especially in this configuration, what do you think makes the difference above a perfectly measured DBA, which actually can also get up to 100 milliseconds or even better?
Sure. So the main principle really is that the double bass array design is inherently flawed. So the way a double bass array should be implemented is in a cube. Okay, so you should have equal wall lengths, equal height, equal everything. All the woofers should be absolutely correctly placed, 100%, front and back. Okay. So in a practical application, it's actually quite difficult to achieve in a home theatre environment. Nobody has square rooms. So that's not saying that double bass arrays don't have their place, because they absolutely do. They work very, very well, but they don't really lend themselves 100% to a rectangular room like home cinema. The next thing is then a double bass array works on a volumetric array. So when you have tiered seating, it doesn't really suit again. So all you're doing, the more and more stuff you add, you're actually losing the benefit of the DBA slightly every time. Okay, so they're very, very good, providing very good decay. But if you think about the way a double bass array is designed with the inverted rear wall, we don't have 100% cone area on the wall at the back. So we inherently don't get...
Well, it depends on the density of subwoofers you place inside the room.
But either way, we don't get 100% cone area, so we inherently don't get 100% absorption. Equally, we don't in there, so but I'll come back to that. Obviously, any sound that comes back from the array that doesn't get caught is out of phase. Yeah, because it's obviously the cancellation wave, and then it's emitting. So when it comes back into the room, it's out of phase. So then the front woofer is now out of phase with the signal. So it then can't absorb that signal further. Okay. The way the Trinov algorithm works is all the subs are in phase. Okay. So you get 100% absorption. So anything that comes off the back wall gets absorbed by the front wall. Okay.
How do you do this kind of absorption without running the subwoofers with the opposing phase?
Well, and this is the magic. That's what the algorithm does. Yeah.
Okay.
So I am not clever enough to explain it. That's my CEO, Arno Labru's job. But that's the magic. Now, additionally to that, the algorithm allows for all the losses that I just spoke about. So non-ideal subposition, non-ideal room size and geometry, tiered seating, all of that. Because what the algorithm's actually doing, on top of being an absorption mechanism, is actually a base steering mechanism. So we're steering the base in 3D.
Okay, I got this at your presentation. My question on this topic is, what's the minimum configuration in general a customer needs to have in order to take advantage of this?
Sure.
Well,
So
I think you cannot steer with just one subwoofer.
absolutely not. No. So we honestly, at this stage, we're still working on the algorithm. So we still plan to develop this for 9 to 12 months. So we haven't tested all the available different configurations.
Okay.
So some of the stuff that we think is possible, we need to test. So what we know at the moment is we can do it with as minimum as 3. Okay, so 3 in the front and 3 in the back. Okay. The reason why I say 3 is because you put them in a triangular
Every
configuration.
axis, X and Y axis.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then you get the vertical steering and the horizontal steering, as well as the absorption.
Do customers benefit from this solution without having subwoofers in the back?
Not in its current form.
Okay.
But that's the next stage of the research, is to go beyond the inherent benefits that the DBA gives us to go to more traditional sub-layouts.
Do you plan to expand the sound field technology to full range speakers as well, so they can also take place on that?
Sure. I mean, I can't say 100% at the moment that we will. Of course, you know, by proving the algorithm in the base, we could easily apply it to the high frequencies. The issue with doing that with the high frequencies is they're so directional.
No, I meant by applying this filter to full range speakers on their base
Oh yeah, you
reproduction.
could do that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Is it okay?
Yeah. Obviously, you know, in an ideal world, you'd have supporting subwoofers to give the proper SPL that you need, because a floor standing speaker that plays down to 20 hertz really doesn't have the SPL to
But
deliver
if you have this
that
kind of
transient.
speaker, really large, capable full range speakers, they will also take part in it.
Yeah, no reason why not. Absolutely.
Okay. What's the frequency range this new algorithm works?
That's dependent on the woofer array. So the closer you get the woofers together, the higher the frequency we can absorb.
Okay,
we can change. So in its current state, in there, we're doing it up to 150 hertz. As things develop, you know, fundamentally, Trinnov are attacking this from the professional standpoint. We're not trying to solve a mass market problem, and that probably sounds a little bit selfish, but you know, what we're assuming with our customer base is that they provide well-designed acoustically treated rooms in the first place to deal with the high and mid frequencies.
That's what we are for, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so we don't want to take away the job of the integrator.
So this leads me to one interesting question. Some customers even install your processors in living rooms, and just have, let's say, 4 spreaded subwoofers in the room. Do you consider this to be a installation where those customers still benefit?
There's absolutely a benefit to be had, yes.
Okay.
You know, 4 corner subwoofers or slightly further in. The only thing you won't get is the bass steering in the vertical.
Okay, but the time alignment.
But in a typical example like that, you're only catering for one seat, one sofa. So in that regard, you don't really need the vertical steering to account for the tiers. So yes, in theory, it will be possible.
Oh, that's cool. Do you know when the software will be released for everyone?
So we're doing targeted beta installations at the moment, and then in the next 9 to 12 months, we plan to do the first public release.
Most customers will still have to be patient.
Absolutely. You know, we wanted to, as I said in the presentation, we wanted to give a bit of a present to our customers in 2023, which is our 20th year. As I say, we've still got a year's worth of development or so on it before it's ready for public release, but we're just giving a flavour of what's possible. And what it also allows integrators like yourself to do is plan for that a year in advance. So you can now start designing your rooms with your double base array in mind, knowing that our technologies can be ready and waiting for when those projects are delivered.
Cool. Do you know when this update once will be released? Will all customers have to do a new measurement,
Yes.
or will? Okay.
Yeah, they
Okay.
will, because we need to gain much more information about the 3D sound field. So
But you don't need another type of microphone.
we
You can use the existing.
Yeah, we use the existing microphone. So each subs will be measured. Now, how many measurement points? There's a lot of factors to that, depending on the number of subs, depending on the size of the listening area. But it's somewhere between 9 and 20 measurement points. Yeah. So obviously, in that configuration, you would do 3 levels of 3. So a bottom layer at seat height, then a mid layer at chest height, and then a top layer above. So you gain that information.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Interesting. I just forgot my question. Do you have
No
something
worries.
to add?
Only that the update is going to be free of charge to all Altitude users. Of course, they may have to buy some more subwoofers, and they may need some more channels as well. So obviously our typical, very typical and very popular Altitude 16 product, you know, if you're going to go for the double base array type arrangement, you're going to need individually addressable channels. So, you know, we have products that you can take that single LFE out and then process those subs using the separate correction box.
I just remembered my forgotten question.
Go for it.
Will customers still be able to set up the basic bass management by themselves, or will Soundfeed Technology take over and define where to do the crossover?
Yeah, that is the plan. So as it is at the moment,
Yeah. Everything automatic.
Well, it won't do everything automatic. You can absolutely specify your crossovers.
But there will be a recommendation.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, ideally, you know, there's 2 reasons, a number of reasons why you want to pick your crossover and not be told what your crossover should be. You know, if you set your crossover too high, you end up clouding all the mid-range.
Yeah.
If you set it too low, then you maybe don't get the impact and the
What's
punch.
the best solution? So basically, if the customer is not able to set up everything by himself professionally,
Yep.
he can just follow the suggestion from the program.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you don't know where to set your bass management, just set it at 80 hertz. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be about right.
And in general, this feature
Yeah.
is supposed to be used and configured without having to have a technician on site to perform all those calibrations.
Not really, honestly. We always advocate. We always advocate the use of a professional. We don't want to alienate our end users that are particularly enthusiasts. So we will put together a set of recommendations whereby they are able to do it themselves. I know in Germany, obviously, you guys have a hugely passionate audience that really get into the technology and really want to be part of that process. We always advocate professional calibration, but we know that's not always the case. So we will enable, you know, users to do it themselves that have the interest and the means to do it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Any news on the HDMI 2.1 card?
Sure.
For
So
turn-off process?
yeah, we're obviously the world situation with the supply chain is one thing. We don't have an exact date when HDMI 2.1 is going to be available. What we are doing at the moment is any customer that buys an HDMI 2.1 enabled unit will actually get shipped the unit as HDMI 2.0, and then we will deliver the card when it's ready. That is the only solution we can come up with the such wild differences in time frames. So you can enjoy your Trinnov with the benefits of the sound correction, and you can leave the high frame rate stuff for when it's actually available in the card. It's a fairly easy process to update. It's you know, lid off, change the card, and a software update approach. So not to be done by everybody, but certainly by your integrator. And then you're good to go. So anyone who's using HDMI 2.1 devices at the moment, such as PlayStation 5 or whatever, they're going to be using it typically with an LED TV. They won't be using it with projection. So we can already get around this issue by using the audio return channel. So send the HDMI straight direct to the video straight to the TV, let it do the processing 120 frames, and then bring the audio
Keep
back
it simple,
to the
yeah.
decoder.
I've got it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, HDMI 2.1 is a great you know, feature, but it's not really a widely implemented solution yet. So a bit more time needed.
Do you recommend customers to go for this 8K card without having any sources or displays that use this technology?
You know,
so if you have a 4K chain that works actually,
Yeah.
do you recommend those guys make this upgrade, or is there anything that?
Honestly, it's completely up to the user. You know, we give you the option. You can buy the upgrade card when it's available. That's not a problem. But you know, just think about the necessity for it. Is it necessary?
Yeah.
With any new technology, there's always going to be a teething period. You know, I'm sure you guys remember the transition from HDMI 1.4 to 2.0. It was a nightmare, a real nightmare.
Yeah.
Every manufacturer is implementing all their own solutions to try and solve this problem and creating even more interoperabilities. So all I will say, guys, is use good quality cables. They don't have to be expensive.
You can make some advertising.
No.
Trinnov is using cord.
We are using cords here.
Yeah.
The guys at Cords,
gerade nirgendwo hier dran.
they produce fantastic cables. A bit of general information, don't use cables less than 2 meters,
Yeah.
okay? Perfect recommendation. And if you need to go over 5 meters, use fiber and active.
Yeah.
All right. So, but other than that, you know, when the technology is more evolved in HDMI 2.1, we'll be ready and available for upgrade.
Did you notice at CES that Oro showed a lossless streaming codec?
I did.
Do you think this is the future of home theater? So we will be able to use Apple TV Generation 6, and this is the end of physical discs by having high-res streaming?
I do and I
codes?
don't. I do and I don't, because you know, no matter what lossless compression you use, there is still compression. So inherently, you get better quality by the disc anyway. And then if you take it one step further by going for something like Kaleidoscape, you get better quality again than the disc. And then if you go the full way and you go to DCP, then you get the actual full quality, which is still compressed. At some point, there's always compression in the chain. So the way I think about it is streaming is convenient, it's good quality, it's not the best, but it's absolutely applicable for the market. So I don't think media's hard media is dead at all. I just think it's a complementary technology to streaming.
All right. Thank you so much for the nice talk.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Thanks.
Anytime. Thank you.
Alright, dann gehen wir mal vom Trinnov-Stand weg und jetzt wissen wir, Sie und ich, mehrere Dinge. Punkt Nummer 1, wie man Englisch klingt, wenn ich in 5 Tagen insgesamt 10 Stunden geschlafen habe und total gerade so einen Müdigkeitsflash gehabt habe. Ich freue mich jetzt echt aufs Hotel, aber viel wichtiger ist das Thema mit dem Sound. Es ist noch in Entwicklung, dauert also noch recht lange, bis es kommt. Es hat verdammt viel Potenzial und da könnte auch wirklich die Zukunft liegen. Interessant, also die Zukunft darin liegen, dieses Active Room Treatment, jetzt habe ich das ART benutzt, dieses Akronym. Aktive Raumakustik, wie wurde das genannt? Active Absorbers, irgendwie so ähnlich habe ich es mal gelesen, dass man wirklich im tieffrequenten Bereich durch Processing verhältnismäßig viel machen kann, aber dass man auch dementsprechend viel Hardware im Raum braucht, und da scheint sich rauszukristallisieren, dass das der große Unterschied zwischen Stome und Trinnov ist, dass die Trinnov-Lösung einen anderen Ansatz hat und gleichzeitig für diesen anderen Ansatz mehr Schallquellen im Raum braucht, um einfach mehr Steuerungsoptionen zu haben. Das ist irgendwo logisch. Wenn ich lenken will, dann kann ich besser lenken mit mehr Subwoofern im tieffrequenten Bereich. Vielleicht kriegt man das ja, nicht nur vielleicht, das kriegt man sicherlich nochmal irgendwo detaillierter erklärt. Da gibt es dann wieder irgendwelche Pressemitteilungen. Und diese 2-Stunden-Demo, die er erwähnt hat in seiner kurzen Ansprache von der Demo, die würde ich total gerne gesehen haben. Aber ich bin dankbar, dass wir es hören konnten. Es klang wirklich gut, super knackig und präzise. Aber wie ich schon auch in dem Interview gesagt habe, kenne ich das so von DBAs, wenn die richtig gebaut sind, was jetzt zweifelsfrei der Fall war. Und die Subwoofer waren auch klasse, alles super. Aber Sie wissen, wie es ist. Man muss immer die Dinge erstmal selber testen, um in einem Raum dann mal zu gucken, wie klingt und misst sich als DBA. Und ich persönlich habe die kurze Einführung an manchen Punkten vielleicht auch einfach nur falsch verstanden, oder vielleicht war sie wirklich missverständlich. Was macht jetzt eigentlich wirklich welcher Absorber, oder ist das jetzt ein DBA oder doch nicht? Da bleiben jetzt natürlich viele Fragen. Und das ist immer auf so einer Messe eine Sache, wo man an einem Tag, wenn man übermüdet ist, hingeht und kriegt an jeder Ecke zigtausend Infos hingeworfen, und dann schustern die ihre Präsentation zusammen und man sitzt in der Demo, die am ersten Tag noch nicht so ganz lief, am zweiten lief sie besser. Diese ganzen Videos hier von den Messen dienen einfach und allein der Info, okay, da gibt es was, so als Appetizer. dafür ist es gedacht und der Appetit ist auf jeden Fall da. Und übrigens, ach, jetzt sage ich es viel zu spät. Jetzt guckt ja kein Mensch mehr hier die letzten Sekunden von dem Video an. Wir sind auch Trinnov-Händler. Ja, wir machen zwar natürlich Storm als Distributeur, das heißt aber nicht, dass wir hier unsportlich sind und von vornherein andere Marken in dem Bereich ausschließen. Denn Trinnov hat auch in manchen Bereichen einfach, gerade durch die Thematik mit den Presets, Vorteile. Nur ob jetzt Dirac ART besser ist oder Trinnovs Soundfield-Lösung, keine Ahnung momentan. Muss man abwarten. Ich vermute mal, dass Dirac den Vorteil hat, wie schon vorhin erwähnt, auch mit kleinen Systemen, allein schon mit 2 Lautsprechern was hinzukriegen, wo ich bei Trinnov mehr brauche. Aber jetzt wiederhole ich mich. Oh, ich habe gar keine Lust, jetzt hier ins kalte, dunkle Barcelona rauszugehen. Ich habe nämlich keine Jacke dabei. Aber was muss, das muss. Ich melde mich von der ISE 23 ab. Und das nächste Video findet dann höchstwahrscheinlich wieder in heimischen Gefilden statt. Und ich hoffe, Sie sind dabei, weil Sie abonniert haben und dann sofort sehen, wenn was Cooles Neues auf dem Channel erscheint. Bis dann. Ciao.